Hello and welcome everybody to New Earth Consciousness. Tania here with Iysha Barrett Morichon. Did I say that right? Love it.
Marisha.
Morichon. And she's a mother mentor, somatic and body work therapist. And she's a mother of two, ages 6 and 3. And so, Iysha, thank you for being here. Excited to dive into this topic of motherhood, which is so vast, but so essential and so important for half of the population. So, yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And like you say, it's important for so many. And actually, when I always think about like mother and motherhood, we all come from a mother. So it's kind of
Yeah,
important for
actually,
everybody.
everybody, right? It's not half. Maybe half of us have that role, but yeah, it is. It's what the mother is where we come from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
profound. Actually, I have to say, I just put up a post about the divine feminine and the mother, the cosmic mother. Like, what is she? What is her essence? Ananda Maima was a saint, amazing woman. Really, but she was so much more than just a woman, really a mother of. Anyway, that post really goes into, okay, what is a mother? What are the qualities? What is she really? And it's beautiful. So, with that, before we dive in, I just want to let the audience know that your website is animamaia.com, ANIMAMAIA. It'll be in the description here. So yeah, so let's start. Yeah, I think, this topic that we're going to talk about, I think is obviously relevant for so many. And um, why don't we start with your own journey becoming a new mother? Because I think that, yeah, that rite of passage is, you can't expect, there's no way to know what's on the other side of it beforehand until after you go through it. So, yeah.
For sure. And I think my own experience of becoming a mother was quite traumatic in many ways. I felt like, when my daughter was born, the birth was traumatic. So there was quite a lot of healing for me to do just around the birth, and around how she was born versus how I had hoped and wanted her to be born. Um, and then I kind of felt like I was just walking through a dark tunnel, is the best way I can describe it, for so many months after. And it wasn't until my partner was like, do you think that there's something more going on here? And I had never thought about that.
Mm.
And at the same time, friendships were like falling apart. Work felt really strained and different. I wasn't sure who I was becoming within the world of like my working life. I
Mm.
wasn't sure who I was in my relationship. I wasn't sure um, who I was in terms of other relationships and friendships, and how I was able to show up, and whether I wanted to show up and whether other people wanted to show up for me. Everything felt like in some ways it was kind of falling apart. And I guess at the time, I really took that like as a personal failure, that I was doing something wrong. I obviously wasn't being a good enough mum. And then to top that off, we then went into COVID lockdowns, and I
Mm.
then just isolated. I was
Yeah.
alone with with a small child, and and it was really difficult time. And it wasn't until I then had my second daughter, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, something wasn't going right for me the time last time. And I really allowed myself, I'd done lots of research and learning about the kind of postpartum and the 40 days, and
Mm.
really allowing myself that time to bond with baby, to rest. The birth itself was very deeply healing at home in the way I'd wanted my first daughter to be born. So much of that pain from my first initiation into motherhood felt like it was able to move into a kind of more of a space of being healed or healing. And I always say that like my first daughter kind of killed me in a way. In a way, she like killed something off that really had to be squashed and trodden into the earth to allow me to literally the second time around feel like I'd been reborn. You know,
Mm,
a bit like that phoenix rising from the ashes. And I feel like it doesn't always have to be that difficult though, or it shouldn't have to be that difficult, because I think generations and generations ago we had women walking alongside mothers to be, guiding them and supporting them through that transition and through that rite of passage that we have mostly lost in our modern culture and our modern society. There's women trying really hard to bring it back, but what was so natural to us once has now become something that we have to capitalize on and have to really kind of scream into the void about in a world that doesn't really honor mothers in so many ways, or even speaking about mother, divine, cosmic, great mother, you know, that has like so little reverence for mother just beyond the human mother.
mm. Yeah, wow. I'm just getting tingles as you were talking. Yeah, so I'm curious. So, did you, in your experience, yeah, those 40 days, I was fortunate enough to, I guess, with my first partner, that he had that knowledge as an acupuncturist that the 40 days is so important for the mother to not to just literally be in the home, not go out and about, just to rest, just to be with the child, eat nourishing foods, you know. And it's true in our culture. I see so many, you know, I think it might be getting better, but moms, they birth and then they're back to work, you know. I don't know how many weeks later, but you know, I just can't imagine, you know, our bodies become so energetically open. We're just, we're wide open it's like we're in this field of energy that's just so expansive with the baby and everything. And to have that space be protected is so important. And it is interesting how my experience too, the second born was easier than the first. I think the firstborn, it's like the initiation is just, it doesn't matter how many books you read or who you talk to and what advice you get. It's like it's this journey that you just have to go through and experience for yourself. And you're in this completely new, unknown territory for yourself. And yeah, it's so important to, if you can, have the resources. So I'm curious with the second born, were you able to maybe gather other elders around you, or how was it? Maybe go more into how it was different, because you're right. It's like this identity has to die. The maiden has to die. This idea that, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep, you know, going out to the clubs or whatever, you know, it's like, no, you know, that whole life is over, you know, and it is hard. You feel like, I know for myself, I felt that too as an artist. I was like, oh wait, but my art, oh, but wait, you know, like the part of myself that I felt was free was suddenly taken from me. Like now I wasn't free, you know, and yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah, it feels the image that I get in my head is like feeling a bit tethered. Um, you know, and I think none of us want to feel that way. And so many of us think before, especially, you know, probably going into it a bit naive, like, this baby is not going to change me. You
Mm,
know, this won't change my life. It will just like work around it. Will create a life that where they just slot in and I can continue to do and be the things I was doing. And for
mm,
me, you know,
mm,
my kind of mid-20s, that was like meditating, going to yoga classes, you know, like having all this time to for all this self-care, and suddenly I couldn't remember if I brushed my teeth and or my hair. And with my first daughter, I went back to work teaching yoga classes 3 weeks after she was born with still stitches in my perineum, like literally. I now look back on it and think, what the hell? My husband was like, please stay at home. I'm like, please don't. He begged me not to do it. But I was like, I'm a strong woman. I have to go and prove myself in the world.
Mm.
Um, which was hard. And it was so interesting because on reflection, like I had a group of women who were like, yeah, go. And another group of women who were like,
Uh,
what are you doing? This is crazy.
wow.
And it's so interesting now. At the time, I didn't think about that. But now reflecting, I'm like, look, even how ingrained it is within us as women that like we should be productive, and productivity is going out to work and not our role in the home. So I think that for me, for the second time round, I was able to prepare beforehand, cooking. I asked like my mom and my mother-in-law to like be around and help me in preparing things beforehand. Um, and then was asking people if they came to visit. I was like, well, can you bring something for us as a family, as like food, or offer to like take out my older daughter at the time, because she didn't want to just hang around at home all day looking at a baby. So to try to put things in place that made me and allowed me to feel much more supported in that. And I think that felt, number one, it felt quite powerful to be able to ask for help and ask for what I needed in that moment or in those moments. It's not always easy, but it feels a really important step of taking power and control back of our motherhood, being able to ask for what we need, whether that's from people exterior, however, whether that's partners or wider family or friends, but being able to have those things that like, actually, I can't do this on my own. I need support, and I need to be able to ask for that support so I can get met, so I can be the best mother I can be. I need that wider network to support and hold me, and as I will do for other people who are going through the same as me, when I have that capacity also to step in and support.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like I feel like we have everything upside down in a lot of ways in our culture. The mother really has, I think, the most important role when it comes to humanity, right? Like that in, those, especially those first 3 years, it's like the mother needs to be in that centerpiece, and then everyone else around her. It's not that she just, there's just so much important work that's happening that might not be obvious to people. It's like just being with the baby, looking at the baby, interacting, like it's such an important time, and to have that space to be able to really immerse yourself in that is is just so important. And yeah, yeah, it's unfortunate that we're having to re-educate ourselves around it. I mean, if we just think about the birthing process itself and how it was really, gosh, I mean, hijacked by Western medicine, like that, women had to be strapped down, and, all this and all these interventions and everything, where it's like the 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 mother inside us, the divine feminine is just in our bodies. It's like the body knows what to do if you give the body the space, and so so for you, I guess, yeah, so would you say that with the first one, where you was postpartum depression going on? Would you name it as that?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it went on for so long that I couldn't just call it. It went
It
past the
just,
point of baby blues. There was days where I just remember being in bed and I had no desire to get out, and I just had my baby, and I'm like looking at her thinking, wow, it's all I've ever wanted, but why does it feel this way?
yeah,
Like, why? And I loved her to pieces, and I could feel that, but at the same time there was just so much that felt just so challenging, I suppose. And I was so unsure.
Mhm.
And I think I'd not given myself in that kind of rushing back to work, rushing to do everything. I'd not even really allowed myself space to just kind of figure out who I was becoming, who did I need to be. And then the voices of everyone around you can get quite loud in like what they think or how other people do the things, and so there felt like then there became so much noise that I couldn't find that space within me. It was like my intuition was screaming at me on the one hand, and on the other hand I was like, oh, but they've been a mum before, so I should listen to like what they're telling me, or this person's telling me this, so maybe I should listen to that instead. Or the health professionals are telling me like my baby's not putting on enough weight and she's she's too late, she's lazy when she's eating. So listening to all these voices, there was some that I was able to go, no, it's okay, and
Mm.
others that I allowed to kind of really spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then with the second one, you said that you felt this rebirth, right? I mean, in a way, it was like suddenly there was a deeper understanding of the process and actually who you have become, I guess. So
Yeah.
maybe go a little bit more into that. What
um
what changed? I mean, it's obviously more than just gathering extra support, right? So,
I I always find it really hard to put into words in some ways. So,
mhm,
and I've recently written about this because I was trying to um, explain or describe a kind of experience that I had during birth that was part of this rebirth. That was um, so I decided I wanted a home birth, and it became a bit tricky because of my previous birth. The home birth midwives were like being threatened by the local hospital with like litigation if anything goes wrong. So
oh,
I'm thinking, oh no. And then it became a point where I had to choose. I either have the baby in hospital or I have the baby at home without any assistance.
mm,
And I decided to do the latter. So I decided that I was going to have the baby at home without any assistance, and that would be the path I would choose. I didn't tell anyone, like only me and my partner knew, because I thought I don't want to like broadcast that really,
mhm,
because it causes all kinds of stress and I did not want that.
mhm,
So we just kept that to ourselves. And there was something about that whole process of being able to drop into such deep communion with my own body, with the baby, with the living intelligence that I believe is mother, that just runs through all of
mm,
us as humans, that there was this moment where it makes me feel so emotional when I think about it, where
yeah.
I can just feel I was like face to face, head to head with like mother. It was cold, it was dark, it was all of the things that I wouldn't, that you might not associate with like being mother. And I felt such a power and a primordial fire.
Mm,
Um, and I just remember holding that. And I knew it wasn't me and it wasn't mine to keep, but it was mine to know.
mm. Oh, wow.
And in that process, I really felt this um, and touched this place that I think we all as women, and especially once when we enter motherhood, if we all had the experience of touching that depth and that primal power of creation itself, then the world would be a totally different place. Everything could shift.
Mhm,
Um, and I think that for me was like literally the pivotal moment that just shifted everything. It gave me such deep confidence in myself, in my own body, in my capacity to be in connection with myself in a way that, a lot of women don't really get to experience, because it took such a trust, especially after the previous birth of, oh, you can't do this on your own. I was like, yes, I can. I'm a woman. This is what I know.
Hmm.
And it feels like that for me was like a huge part of my personal rebirth. Um, and then the whole time after, I was in elation for weeks. You know,
Mm.
I almost felt like, oh no, I don't ever want this to end. Is this
Yeah,
ever going to end? Because this feels amazing.
yeah.
And compared to the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, like I felt, even on the one hand, it felt amazing. And on the other hand, I felt like, oh, I feel like I've been robbed of something previously.
Mhm. I remember with my firstborn, I just remember feeling like my body was alien to me. Like it was just doing all these things and, hemorrhoids and acid reflux. And, I just felt, honestly, I just felt kind of ugly and, just awkward. And I didn't have that feeling. And then with the second, like because I knew what the process was going to be, I was more surrendered to it and open to it and embodied with it. And I felt voluptuous. I felt, you know, almost proud of my, how big I was and, all the things. And yeah, it's so interesting how that changes with the second one. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I know what to expect. And so it's almost like if we can, so would you say when you work with women who are going through this, that you guide them to, well, tell us, how do you support women in this process? What are the things? You have a framework and yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so much. There's like so much. It feels so big, and the work feels so big that it's sometimes hard to break it down into something that can even be like
Just kind of formulated or like, here's the
yeah,
formula, like,
yeah, exactly, because
right?
life isn't, we can't put everyone into the same formula and it just be
Yeah.
what it is. So a lot of it is like, a depth and a connection and what opens up in a space. I think that for me is the most important thing. So whilst I like to have a framework in my mind, it's not always so straightforward because we're human and our experiences influence and inform everything that we do and how we are. So I think that's like, for me, every person is so different. But one of the biggest things that is, I really like to reframe the whole thing of like, oh, I've lost who I am, I've lost connection with this, and really try and reframe that into more of like an unbecoming. Um, because number one, it feels so much more empowering than I'm lost.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
unbecoming. I'm allowing myself to be stripped of the parts and places that no longer serve me as a woman, as a mother, and where my life is now moving and shifting. And, personally for me, when I realized, oh, these relationships are dropping away because I would never be able to step into my mother with those.
Yeah.
And again, it was like a long process to get in there. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, that's why those things had to go. The hobbies, the things I enjoy doing in my spare time, all of those things. It's like, oh, so now it's about me finding where to go with those again. And I think that for me is part of what I do with moms. So
Hmm.
my framework uses the word mother as a kind of and I break it down into 6 stages of finding or reclaiming or stepping towards reclaiming, because I think it's also like lifelong work, because we're not static. We change and move, and different parts in our children's lives require us again to shift and adapt with what they're needing from us, what we need in our relationships, or it can always be a kind of negotiation and require us to move and be fluid,
Yeah.
whilst also being able to remain really centered and connected to a pure essence of ourselves. So the first thing I look at is the mother as a muse. Um, and I, and again, like that in itself, I feel like you could explore for like 10 years,
Right.
um, So looking at kind of creativity, intuition, visionary self, seeing mother as the divine mother, the Mother Earth, the Great Mother, whatever someone might like to call that kind of energy, and using that to assist us in looking at how mother then can become new. So it's beyond mother as a human
Hmm.
concept into a kind of, if you like, archetypal concept as well. And like, how does she inform? How can she become the muse? How can she light up those places within us and become the inspiration for who we get to become as a mom, as a mother?
Yeah.
It might also look at a woman's relationships with her mother, or with the inner mother. So it feels huge, and it's hard to break down into something, succinct. So that's often where we begin.
Hmm.
And a lot of women come with, like they're not feeling creative anymore if they were maybe very creative before, or they're feeling a shift in that. How do they bring that into and through now being a mom? And so trying to figure out, and I'm not trying to really figure anything out. I see myself as just like holding someone's hand. I might have ideas and might see things that they might not see, but I don't feel like my role is to tell someone what they should do or where they should go, because I feel like soul's on its own journey through that. And I kind of see my role as midwifing, supporting them and midwifing them through a process of rebirth.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, there. So I guess you're speaking, it's like, how do we even, I guess describe, this experience of motherhood? Like what was coming to my mind as you were speaking was, rite of passages, and motherhood being one of them. And then of course, then there's the rite of passages that our children go through, and I think it's so important as, yeah, rite of passage work, it's so absent in the Western culture, that it needs to be brought back. And because as mother and as father, like it is our duty to create rite of passages for our children. Those moments when they're entering into puberty, and when when they become parents or get married. Like there's all these different rites of passages. And then of course, as a mother, then maybe eventually we become grandmothers, and then it's okay, then it's another shift, another expansion, and another change in our identity. I Let's talk a little bit about intimacy and partnership, and how that changes, from the maiden to the mother.
I really feel like one of the things we're robbed of as moms is that we become like, society kind of, the minute you get pregnant, you become like an invisible person in the world, like in society. You're not really seen by most, you kind of just blend into the backdrop somehow. And I
Mhm.
feel that's just so true of mother, and motherhood, really, is that we just, oh, well, like she's a mom, so, she's a mom now.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, there's something about intimacy and about our intimacy to ourselves, and how we, an intimacy beyond, a kind of physical intimacy, but an intimacy really of knowing ourselves in a more true, honest way. For me, really feels like motherhood can open a door to that. But again, it's like no one speaks about that. If you tell someone like you're pregnant, people are like, oh, is it a girl or a boy? Or, oh, have you got a name picked out? People
Mhm.
aren't like sharing with you some of the depth that comes alongside. And then obviously intimacy in our relationships totally changes, because you've got like a human, and then you go to the doctors and they're like, oh, everything's all good, like you can, get right back to it now. And you're kind of like, oh, really? Because like I've got a baby who's like on me 23 out of 24 hours a day, and like I'm not feeling that. Or other women who are like, all I'm feeling is that. And either way, you feel kind of like something's wrong with you. Um, and I think like intimacy in motherhood is so difficult to speak about. Sex is generally quite difficult for most of us to speak about, yet is like the foundation of a lot of, well, of life.
Yeah, right. That's where we
um,
come from.
exactly. So it's like, how do we
Yeah.
bring intimacy for ourselves in terms of not like a sexual intimacy, but obviously that's important too. But how do we allow ourselves to relearn and get intimate with self again once we enter into motherhood? We're on limited time. How do we get to know those parts and places within us that maybe weren't like so turned on, if you like, before, that are now like turned on? And it's like, oh, actually, who's this? What's this? And then again, how does that then relate to how we then show up in our intimate relationships, for example, with our partners? And what does that mean? What does that look like? Where do we have to renegotiate kind of what feels good for us, what doesn't feel good for us, what we're available for? Because we become available for a lot different things, perhaps. We don't have as much time or as much freedom or as previously. So for me, intimacy is a huge, 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 again, all of these things feel so huge to speak about, because and again, they show up differently for everyone, depending on the circumstances of our relationships and partnerships, and of our connection to ourselves. Some women finding intimacy within themselves again really easy because they were already kind of there before, and they felt empowered by birth. I can definitely say second time round, I was able to get like kind of intimate with myself and look at my relationship to my daughter and see how that was mirroring something within me.
Mm,
But when I
mm.
then began to think about my first experience of being a mum, I was like, oh, well, what was that mirroring for me? What was that showing me at the time? But I didn't want to see it at the time because it felt so painful. And it was only really in hindsight when I was able to go back and go, oh, so that's why these relationships weren't going to work. That's why, because I wasn't in a space where I was ready to be a mother. I was still trying to be a maiden, and I
Mm.
didn't want to let go of all of that. So I think there's some of those things that we don't want to always go into with ourselves. So when I speak of intimacy, it's those things as well. What's
Mm.
that depth within us versus maybe what we can try and like wiggle out of and avoid.
Yeah. There were some things that you were saying there that I feel like I want to mention and just name, because I think there can be a lot of shame that mothers carry when they encounter these feelings as a new mom. Like, I was in a women's circle the other day, and there's a young mom of, I think her children are like 1 and 3, or 3.5, very young. And she just said, I'm struggling. Like, I feel exhausted. I feel bored. Like, and that's something that we don't talk about. It's like, yeah, you can feel really bored as a mom when you're with a couple of little ones, or one little one, whatever. It's like, um, it's such a, yeah, and it can feel that way. And so I feel like so many mothers suffer from shame because, like you said, they're like, God, why do I feel this way? I, I want things to be different, but yeah, I'm bored, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. My children are driving me crazy. You know, they're causing a mess. It's like herding cats. It's, all those things that can feel, it's true. It can feel exhausting, and we don't. And how, yeah, there's the struggle to find the time for self-care. There's all of that. And yet, and at the same time, there is this deep love for the child and all of that. And it almost, I think it feels like when you're in it, you're just in it and you can't see the forest for the trees, in a way. It's like, somewhere intellectually, I think women understand like, okay, this isn't forever. Like this does change, but how can we help, or how do you help a woman who's in that space with young children and she's feeling that way?
I mean, I don't think I've ever met a mum who doesn't feel that way, whether, in at some moment or another. And I'm no different, Sometimes people are like, oh, well, you like, you do this and this is, I'm like, oh yeah, but it doesn't mean that like I love hanging out with my kids every single day. Like my 3-year-old has just broken her leg. And I'm like, oh my
Oh
gosh,
God.
I've got a month like to be with her, like at home. It's going to be very, I'm like, it's so intense. And everyone's like, oh, I fly by. And I'm like, but you're not having to, it's not you who's in this situation. Like, what am I going to do for a whole month? And I think often as mums, it's like, when's the exhaustion ever going to end? When we're in it, it's like, oh, look, I've got like these kids at this age and this age. And some people are like, oh, my children sleep through the night from like 3 months old. And you're like, really? How do you for that? Because like I've not met any who do that, and it's like, oh well, mine are like mine don't. So I think we have like too much comparison in the world as well, where we we either hear terrible stories or like the inverse of like the best possible scenario, but everything in the middle feels a little bit like, oh well, I've not got it as bad as them, but I've still not slept for 3 years and I'm exhausted,
Yeah.
and then I'm doing all these other things as well. And actually, yeah, it can be boring to read the same story 15 times in a day.
Right,
It can
singing the
be
same
boring.
lullaby. I have to interject. I think I sang Silent Night for like 8 years every single night.
Yeah,
To get my
it's
kids to
like,
go to sleep. Yeah.
yeah, and like, and kids love it. It's
Yeah.
and it's the same with games like playing peekaboo. How many times can you play peekaboo in a day? And we're kind of as mums probably thinking, oh gosh, I've got so much to do. I've got the dishes, I've got the laundry, but here I am like saying peekaboo, and how much is this give? But your child's absolutely adoring it. So it's like, how can we be with? I think one of the things is, how can we be with what is
Yeah.
true for us?
Mhm.
And one of the most important things for me is just to give women space to just share that. Like, today I'm having an awful day. I want to make sure my kids are safe, walk out the house and just like sit in a cave for the day. Like
Mhm.
that would be my dream day. And or whatever, wherever on the spectrum that might be for a mom, I think just the space to be able to be open and honest about how things are for us and how things are going,
Yeah.
can be so supportive. And also I think this is when things like women's circles and specifically for like moms are really important, because hearing stories of like 10, 20 women
Mhm.
can just go, oh look, other people feel the same. I am not on my own, because I think one of the worst things is feeling that we're on our own in this, that we're the only ones who feel this way, that everyone else, has got that Instagram or like social media perfect motherhood going on, where they're like going eating ice cream in their lovely matching outfits, and everything's perfect. Whereas actually, what's true for most people is not that. It's the inverse, it's the
Yeah.
chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really challenging in our modern day culture is just how isolated we've become. And I guess, I have no idea how things were in times past, maybe, it's like I think many of us kind of imagine the village, it takes a village. And we imagine like, yeah, maybe hundreds of years ago, we lived in a village and the children were free to roam and play, and we kind of idealize that. I'm sure there were challenges back then that were different, but it just seems like that we have to create that for ourselves. I think it is important that like you say, women's circles or um, just being around other mothers, grandmothers, building community around yourself, um, to have that extra support network, because it can feel really overwhelming if you are isolated and you're like, I don't know, I mean, I remember one time being so sick. I was a single mom the first time around. And so I had a terrible, terrible flu. I mean, I was, the worst kind you can imagine. And I could not, I was like, I can't, I
Mm.
need to be in bed and I've got this 2-year-old, like I need somebody to come in and just take care of him so that I can just get through my illness. Any things like that where it's like we have to, so I guess, in some ways maybe in the past when we were so maybe proud of our self-reliance and independence, you suddenly are thrust into realizing like, guess what? You're going to have to learn how to ask for help, and kind of let go of the pride and, that staunch, independent, fierce woman maybe you used to be. And it's very humbling. And you do have to kind of, I guess, seep back into the wholeness of the community of or finding your way back into that to create that because otherwise it is then the challenge becomes daunting. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think, on community is important at all stages, through all stages of life. And I think as women, we're naturally drawn to a much more kind of community driven way of living and way of being that's a bit more circular rather than hierarchical in the same ways. But then it's like, what does community actually ask of us? Because I think often that's where it can get tricky, because maybe
Mhm.
for a lot of us, we're not so used to it. We like might want community to show up for us, but what does it sometimes mean for us showing up for
Yeah,
community as
right,
well? Like,
right. Yeah.
when the other
Reciprocal.
mums
Yeah.
get sick, they've got 3 kids, and you're like, oh, well, she helped me out with my like 2 kids. So now I'm gonna, it's like that reciprocity. I think that even within the community can feel sometimes like, oh, how am I going to step in and help other people, or be there for other people, or support other mothers in the way that maybe people have supported me. And I think sometimes that can be a really big and in itself an initiation, I suppose,
Yeah.
being initiated into a more communal way of living and being with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. So upon closing here, maybe share a little bit more how women can work with you. What do you offer?
So I offer a 6 week or a 6 month mentorship package. So in the 6 weeks, obviously, it's a lot more brief, and we work through the kind of 6 stages that I mentioned earlier, of which I mentioned one, but there's another 5.
Yeah.
Um, and the same with the 6 months. We work a month in each through each phase, and it's really for me about supporting moms or women, into really reconnecting with the essence of themselves, reclaiming that identity, and really coming into reverence for what it is to be a mother, because that feels so important to me. When we can feel so bogged down by the weight sometimes of motherhood and all we have to carry, but really coming into reverence for all it does offer and give to us as well.
Mm.
Um, because sometimes for me that, yeah, that can feel like it gets lost in the whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not with a kind of bypassing of, oh, you should just be grateful. You should be grateful for your children at all times and
Right, right,
always,
right.
know.
Right. That doesn't help.
So coming into a kind of reverence that honors the, I always say I like to honor both the raw and the like human parts of motherhood and the magic as
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. Um, and so animamaya.com, just to name the website again, and all the links are in the description here. Iysha, thank you so much for being here, for really just opening this topic. I don't, I haven't had anybody else on my channel really diving deep into this, and it really is, you know, it's it's such a cornerstone of humanity. Like we all have to, spend a little more time getting to know the mother and all of that. What that means for us as women becoming mothers and I guess the good news is in the collective, the divine feminine is returning, and it'll be really, really interesting to see how that begins to impact our society, our culture, civilization, like as a whole in the future. So it's really beautiful. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And is there any like closing comment you want to share with the audience?
Yeah. I mean, just when you were just speaking then, the thing that always hits me is, yeah, with like the reclamation of the divine feminine and such that powerful energy coming back. And it's rare that I see it and how it relates to mother. We kind of, again, it feels like she's kind of still forgotten in some ways.
Mm,
And we can claim this like goddess energy, and a
mm,
lot of work around the divine feminine often is in that sphere of goddess and
mm.
the priestess and these really glamorous
Right.
um, kind of aspects of the divine feminine, but there's not many people out there speaking about the mother in terms of the divine feminine
Yeah.
and the role of mothers in that reclamation of divine feminine. And I think for me that was something that has been like, where is she? She's still not,
Yeah,
you
it's so
know
true. So
and
true.
like great to be a goddess, but we're not all in that goddess space where we can do that. It's like some of us are in the house, like doing God's work essentially
Right.
from
Yeah.
from the
And then
ground
and
up.
then we talk about the crone, like that's not even like that, it's another sort of hidden
Yeah,
archetype as
for
well.
sure.
So I'm glad that you named that because that's true. I think that's important. Just naming it, then we can, there's awareness of like, oh yeah, what about her?
Yeah, it's
Maybe we
like the
should be looking
maiden,
for her, or talking about her, or
for
sharing about
sure.
her, and yeah.
The maiden's like revered as like, oh, the maiden energy, and that's everywhere. Or like that kind of more queen type of energy that's like, but everything in between's like kind of missing. Like you
Hmm.
say, the crone, where's she?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so nourished by this conversation. Like as you're
Me
talking, I
too.
just kept feeling like just like tingles in my body and just this deep knowing and just deep appreciation. My heart is very full. So thank you so much for your work and speaking about it. And to the audience, please like, share, and subscribe as always. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody.